There's an unlikely partnership taking shape in the United States Senate to tackle climate change. Republican Senator Mike Braun and Democratic Senator Coons are introducing the first ever bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus. The group is going to focus on specific policy proposals rather than on an ideological platform. Specifically, the caucus is going to have an equal number of members from each party. It will not have a chair or a ranking member and will only move forward on ideas with unanimous consent. So what can we expect to see from this rare show of bipartisanship? I'm joined now by those founding members of the Climate Solutions Caucus, Delaware Senator Coons and Indiana Senator Mike Braun. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. I appreciate your being here. I have to say, I'm going to start with you, Senator Braun. I don't know if you can get equal numbers of people to agree on anything, even for people who share a view of how serious climate is. Why have this system where you only move forward things if everybody agrees?
When you just read those criteria, we may get nothing done, but I really think quite the opposite. I decided to become the first Republican to cross over to do something that I've been a believer in since I moved back to my hometown in the late 70s. I've been a lifelong conservationist. I've recycled. I've been a steward of the land, and I've always wondered why conservatives don't believe more in conservation. Many do, but don't put it into practice. And I can't imagine a time that is more pertinent to where this might work. And I think, yes, we'll get some forward-thinking Republicans with Democrats here to address what I consider to be right up there with the cost of health care, the most important issue facing especially future generations.
Senator Coons, there's a Climate Solutions Caucus in the House, and actually the numbers are not as crazy as one might think. There's 63 members of them, 41 are Democrats, 22 are Republicans. That's a little out of keeping with polling that we've seen. So I want to put up a CBS poll that asked people when should we address climate change. That's a different screen, so I'm just going to ask the control room to put up the poll. 80% of Democrats say we have to do it right now. 27% of Republicans say so. 55% of Republicans say later or not at all. And 11% of Democrats say so. The work here is getting those numbers more in line. So now that you have a partner standing next to you, what is the work to do to get more people on side with this conversation?
Well, I think part of what we're trying to do here, Ali, is to end what has been a frozen conflict where each caucus, each party in the Senate of the United States is pursuing a different agenda when it comes to climate, to energy, to competitiveness. We need to have a common conversation that recognizes that climate is a real challenge, that there is clearly something going on in our climate. It is changing, and human activity, emissions are contributing to it, and we have to do something about it. We can then begin a meaningful debate about how soon, what biggest scale, what kind of intervention, what sort of incentives or technology or investment do we need to make? That's a conversation that is literally not happening at all today. In my 9 years in the Senate, I've never seen a constructive bipartisan conversation about how to tackle climate. I'm grateful to Senator Braun for being willing to join with me in pulling together a balanced bipartisan group that'll have the conversation. Because, frankly, I think that's the only way we end up moving forward with sustainable, enactable legislative solutions to how we're going to tackle this challenge.
Go ahead, Senator Braun.
One quick addition to that. The thing I see different here as well is that the industry. I've been taking on the healthcare industry, especially insurance, for a long time, built a sustainable plan, but it was like pulling teeth from the get-go. 80 senators have weighed in on healthcare, and the industry I see mostly dragging its feet. In the short time I've been here, I've been sitting down in meetings with energy entrepreneurs and some of the largest fossil fuel companies. They really are on the move to try to be part of the solution. Night and day difference. And I think that is why it makes it worthwhile for me, because they're going to have to be a part of it. If we can't convince them to change, we're basically just doing this in the abstract.
So let me ask you this, Senator, because you made a point of saying, you know, you've been a lifelong conservationist, and the history of conservation and things that look like care for the environment, has actually had a good, strong history in the Republican Party historically, but not at the moment. So how do you get the Republican Party back to a much more natural place for it when it comes to climate?
Well, that has been a legacy of the party, and conservation, conservatives, you almost spell it the same way. It'll be a more complicated argument than that, but it takes leadership. I think when people see a guy like me, who is known for his fiscal conservatism, but his entrepreneurialism, and coming from a state like Indiana, it's got a great business climate that gets things done. It's going to take that kind of, I think, leadership, along with maybe folks that have already articulated the issue, and that's when you head forward on it. And sometimes there's just a threshold or a breaking point, and I think we're at that. And especially when I take the small poll of my 4 kids, believe in this significantly and really push me as hard to work on this as anything else while I'm a senator here.
The poll of your kids, in most people's cases, is the only poll that matters. Hey, before I let you guys go, Senator Coons, you do a lot of work on foreign affairs. I have really been trying to make sense of what's going on in northern Syria. Can you?
Well, we actually got a very compelling briefing at lunch today from Brett McGurk, who was a senior figure in both the Obama and Trump administrations as the special envoy for the counter-ISIS fight. And it was a very depressing, frankly, a briefing over what's the harm to our strategic position in northern Syria, what's the harm to the Kurds, what's the risk that ISIS will reemerge. I'll remind you that 70 U.S. senators on a bipartisan basis in January of this year supported a resolution that was advanced by Majority Leader McConnell urging President Trump not to abruptly withdraw from Syria. Nonetheless, he did so, and there have been strong voices saying that was a bad thing to do, and we now need to take some action to both sanction Turkey and redouble our efforts against ISIS. I think that's a bipartisan position here in the Senate, and I think we've really got our work cut out for us.
Senator Coons, good to see you on the show. And Senator Braun, thank you for being with us. Good to see you. And thanks for the work you're doing on climate change. It is a crucial issue. We'll talk to you both again. Thank you. Coming up next, there's new reporting that President Trump